Okay. So we have to talk about something, right? So the title of this video is that pop psychology is just better marketed astrology. And what I mean by that is not to say or offend in any way psychology. I'm one of the one of the biggest supporters of it as a science, as a way of helping people at all, or as well as um, a modern tool to actually push growth in people and let them improve and get over their challenges, right? Get past their obstacles in life and so forth, right? So I'm all for it, right? You can look up things about me, and there are a lot of things that I did in my life, that I've done in my life, that support that thesis, right? But what we're talking about right now today, what I'm trying to approach at this very moment, is that the state that the mental health industry is in right now. Everything that you see online in regards to self-improvement, in regards to mental health, in regards to self-improvement, goal setting, mental disorders, mental illnesses, and all those personality tests that and intelligence tests are incredibly important, right? I'll just start with it. So, So today in class, I was in English class, and the teacher asked, our teacher put on a material about being focused and everything, because we have a bit of a struggle, as most teenagers do, at being focused in class, especially if we have some bits and pieces where we do online schooling, right? And that was an amazing podcast, right, by Andrew Huberman. He did it, and afterwards she begins speaking about the learning styles theory, right? As we are very well known, she starts talking about, yes, there are many people that are either visual learners, auditory learners, and so on. And she starts actually arguing that people actually learn better if they're visual learners, if they prefer that certain material to be in a visual format or in an auditory format, or some other preferred way of learning that material. Now, obviously, a lot of my colleagues started to claim that they're visual learners, because that seems like the most sexiest way to put it out there, because it's very compatible with how the society is progressing right now, with screens, with a lot of productivity tools being online. You obviously have to be a visual learner in order to keep up with times, especially as a young person in this society. Now, the problem that appears with this theory, and I didn't find it like as a nice theory or as a teacher being thoughtful. Obviously, they were. The only problem lies behind the fact that that theory is absolutely meaningless. There's no scientific evidence proving that a preferred way of learning, whether that's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, improves efficiency in learning, right? There's absolutely no scientific evidence that prove that, and I'll actually link some of the studies down below. Now, what that actually sparked in my mind at the very moment is that's what's happening in today's society, especially in Gen Z. Gen Z youngsters that are now encountering all of these quizzes online, all of these classification tools about yourself, self-diagnosing yourself with some conditions, mental disorders, self-classifying yourself into some mental models, is absolutely self-classifying yourself into these mental models is absolutely a way to destroy the way you can improve yourself, and how you can change your life, and your habits around you, the way you interact with the world, and absolutely, and in many ways, it won't let you evolve anymore, right? So the problem that appears right now is that there's a comfort in people, right? A comfort in actually being labeled, right? I'm a very extroverted person. I like talking to people. That I'm a number 7, right? In like a life path, or I'm a visual learner. I can only learn visual material. I like diagrams, you know. I'm I'm an INFP, you know, the multiple personalities test, right? The MBTI one, the 16 personalities test. I have anxiety. That's just who I am. I can't really talk in front of people or take charge or just go out there and lead anything or lead any project or do anything. That's I'm anxious. I can't do anything about it, right? Now, what happens is that people are comfortable with that. People want to be labeled because that explains a lot. We've seen that all throughout society's history, all throughout humanity's, throughout our civilization's history, that we've had to find ways to explain how things happen, why things happen, whether that's religion, whether that's science, whether that becomes a way for our mind to understand the events that have happened. That's some other way that PTSD is working. That's some other way that some other conditions are actually working. Our mind is trying to fill in the gaps of what's happening with some, not excuse, but solution, some possible or plausible explanation for why things are happening. And what this leads to is that you say, after taking one of these quizzes, right, what's happening is they say, this is who I am, and basically this says, and that's who I don't and you quietly say, yeah, so basically you're saying, this is who I am. I can't do anything about it, right? Not that you can't do anything about it, but we've seen this through exposure therapy. We've seen this through a lot of things that are also called manifestation, right? If this thing can happen for positive goals, probably surely can happen for negative goals as well. If I keep telling myself that I'm an introvert, whether that's good or bad socially doesn't even matter, right? Whether that's desirable or not. What's happening is that if I keep telling myself that I'm an introvert, it kills my ability to adapt to situations where I might need to be a little more extroverted, where I need to be put into a position when I'm a bit more social, when I need to talk to people more. Now, what that leads to, okay, so let's get back to that learning styles myth. So there's absolutely no evidence that actually states that this learning styles theory is actually proven in any way that stands in front of scientific and experimental evidence, right? Well, and none of the studies, all of the studies either are not experimentally foolproof, or they don't have any proof that it's actually a method for increasing efficiency in learning, right? That doesn't happen. A way to put it is like, if you like diagrams, that doesn't mean you learn best from diagrams. That literally just means that you like diagrams. That means absolutely nothing else, right? Basically what it does, and that's the root of all things, that's the root of so many bad things that happens through coming up with these theories that try to validate how people feel but don't actually take into account the less comfortable truth of actually not knowing who we are. We try to define people in the n number of classes that we try to identify through our theory, but that's not how people work. We're not just 4 classes of people that are possible to define. Okay, yeah, you could say that you are either a duck or not a duck, but that's a very efficient way to actually define the universe. But at the same time, does it actually mean anything? Well, no. So let's get back to thinking about what this does later down the line. So what happens if I say I'm a visual learner? What will happen in the next time I actually have to learn a new material and say I have adopted an identity that feels modern and excuses me from struggling with the other forms of learning, right? That's what happens if the teachers, the educational system adopts this theory, and that's what happens in a lot of countries. Especially not the ones where the teachers are very up to date with actual research that's happening in education and psychology and child development. Again, this doesn't work, but if people and education systems keep putting money into these theories that are not proven to work, of course, a lot of money will be wasted, and people will actually be blocked from improving themselves and adapting. Again, this is just intellectual negligence. There's not kindness for children, there's not kindness for teenagers going to the world. That's just intellectual negligence. It's an easy way to define people and how we function, and that's not a way that we want to approach child development, human development in any way, and especially not learning new things and adapting to the world. right? So again, just to cut things more slowly, quick question: who the heck decided that there are only like what, 8 intelligence types, 9 intelligence types? Who decided there are like 16 possible personalities to the MBTI? Who decided there are like 4 tribes to the or people to the DISC quiz? Obviously, that's not what these tests actually do. They're not stating that there are only n number of people possible, then and they're all encompassed in this type of quiz, and then we can all understand who we are through that quiz. No, but that's the result of the quiz. The intent is not necessarily malevolent at the basis of this process, but it does lead to bad and negative results down the line, because if you don't understand how this psychometrics field actually functions, you don't understand that this is just a trial for us trying to understand how human behavior actually works. It's not trying to define how humans work, but that's what's being put out there. That's what people understand. You're either one of these, you're just one of these 16 personalities. You're either extrovert or an introvert. You're maybe less or more anxious. You're more or less open. You either are sensitive or intuitive. You're thinking or you're feeling. You're all sorts of things that are very binary. That's not how people work. I think that everyone can agree on that. But genuinely, again, who decided there are 12 zodiac signs? Absolutely nobody. But we just go with it because we say, yeah, that's fine. What I'm trying to get at is that nature doesn't work within these neat lines. It doesn't work in like 4 categories, not even like 100,000 of categories. Maybe that gets a little bit close to the truth, but that's not how it works, right? We can probably all agree with that. So these kind of similar things is happening with the multiple intelligences theory. We'll talk about that just in a second. So let's just end with these as well. So this theory about learning systems, it feels progressive. It sounds really, really futuristic, like a modern solution for every problem there is in education. Problem is, it doesn't actually work. No, lasă-mi un pic. Serios. So yeah, it doesn't actually work. Again, it just creates boxes and it creates identities for people that didn't exist before. Let's just get into why the Big 5 personality test is a bit better at least than the MBTI, but it's just not enough either. So the Big 5 Ocean personality test framework, however you want to call it, is a bit more serious, right? It's dimensional. You're not saying that you're introverted or extrovert. We're not saying that you're a bit more or less, you're not saying you're open or not open. We're just saying through that ocean framework that yes, you're a bit more open on this scale. You're a bit more open, you're a bit less extroverted, you're a bit more agreeable, you're more conscientious, you're a bit more neurotic, and all of these things. It doesn't approach the situation for each of the axes, each of the dimensions, as a binary or any type of classification, right? It's a regression in the actual sense of the word. It's just somewhere between 0 and 100, which is a very fair way to classify traits. The only problem is who defines how many traits we have. Again, the ocean framework does a good job at trying to explain how human behavior works and how the traits of people are actually organized in a system of personalities. Now, what people take away from this ocean framework, unfortunately, is they take that statistical stability that we have through these quizzes and these tests online, and they turn it into biological stability. And how that happens is basically kind of saying that if there are people saying that introversion, extroversion, that kind of dimension of the ocean of the personality, let's just call it, doesn't really change through our lifetime, right? So what usually happens, and you can probably think of that, is that if I do an online test and it comes out that I'm an introverted person, there's a very high likelihood they'll grip onto that concept and identity. It becomes part of my identity that I'm an introverted person. I start acting like an introverted person, and sooner than you know, you actually end up behaving just like an introverted person in social settings and in many ways. And then looking back, you actually start saying to yourself, well, that test was right, because I am behaving like an introverted person, and that test said that I am an introverted person. But if you actually trace back to what happened, you answered a quiz based on some basic questions about how you behave in certain situations. It's meant to be generalized, but as we probably know, you don't behave the same way when you're with friends or when if we're talking in front of like 50 people, right? That doesn't happen. You're not the same person in both scenarios. But these tests usually merge and fuse these two situations into you thinking that is the same person, or that you're acting and behaving the same way in both of these situations. And that kills a lot of your ability to adapt. That kills a lot of your ability to evolve throughout your lifetime, and actually be more flexible in terms of cognition, in terms of the views that you actually possess, the behaviors that and actions you put out into the world, right? So let's just sum it up. So if you act introverted because you think you're an introvert, and the quiz online says you're an introvert, and then use that as proof that you're an introvert, well, congratulations, you're just a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And to answer this also question as well, how can I just falsely complete those questions and fool myself into thinking that I'm an introvert if I am honest fulfilling those questions? Well, what happens in that our society, a lot of traits, personality, even though they shouldn't be, are classified as either good, bad, negative, positive. Obviously, there's no good personality, there's no bad personality. Everyone's equally desirable and undesirable in terms of those personality dimensions. But society does value them, and those values, those inherent ways of attributing value to a certain object in the world, and by object I mean any concept that's other than our own persona, right? Other than our person. And in this case, extroversion, for example, people that are more sociable, right, are generally tended to be viewed as a bit more desirable. It's a trait to be sociable. It's a trait that is desired by society and the people around you. At the same time, in some context, introversion might actually be more desired by people. And you can see that very well if you think about the concept by the fact that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. We'll not get into that right now, but you probably understand what I mean. Again, doing these things with the quizzes and all of these attributing and classifying yourself into boxes and constraining yourself into certain scenarios, traits, and systems of personas and characteristics leads you to not be able to develop and adapt. Now, what we've just talked about is that being social is good, being confident is good, being empathetic is good, being assertive is good, being creative is good. Nobody talks about the other side of things, that sometimes being not so creative is actually a really good thing. Sometimes being able to sit in a room by yourself is actually really, really important trait to have. Maybe more often than not. Being a bit less empathetic in some scenarios could actually benefit you a lot more than you may think. But these things are not so sexy to talk about on the internet right now. So what happens is that when someone asks you on a quiz, do you enjoy being with people? You'll probably say yes. That doesn't actually take into account, do I feel drained after hanging out with those people? Or when do I actually feel drained after staying with people? Is it when I hang out with 12 people, which I don't really have anything in common with, what I barely know, or when I hang out with like 2 of my best friends and we talk all night long? Maybe I'm the most talkative of the bunch, while the other 2 are alleged and labeled extroverts. That doesn't take into account. And what happens is that you're not answering the truth, you're basically answering an aspirations. I want to be that, or like society tells me I should be that, my community around me tells me I could be that, or it would be better to be that way. So that skews everything. These tests basically constrain us, and we become those self-fulfilling prophecies I've just described and presented, right? Another example which I'll encourage you to look into is externalization, which is part of the narrative therapeutic phenomenon, and I guess process that's a bit more modern. What's basically happening, and I'll actually cite that right now, is a way to view it is that when someone with a bit of a more intense a bit more of an intense and negative situation that they're in comes to therapy and says, this and this happened to me, I'm very, very depressed, I'm very, very a very traumatic event happened to me, it is very, very hard for a therapist to actually access that episode. It's very hard for them to access those events that have happened and actually deal with the situation with the client. Now, narrative therapy is basically saying you are not the problem is just the problem and it's affecting you. I'm not depressed, depression is affecting me. That indeed does lead to a lot of progress in terms of therapy. It leads to clients opening up a lot. But what happens then, it takes away a lot of the responsibility and agency that leads you in your long life, not only that short period of a few months when you're working on this problem, or a year. In this life, when you actually take a lot more agency over the things that you do, the things that you say, the things that you like, the things that you think about, that you work on, and so on, that leads to you actually being more adaptable. That leads to you being able to say, yes, I was depressed. Yes, something very bad happened to me, and it actually changed me. Now, that way I was changed, that way that event modified me, and the way I received it, basically, the way I received it, made me a bit different. Now, if I say, yes, that happened to me, anxieties happened to me, and that's just not my problem because it was anxiety that caused everything bad in my life, not me, that takes away a lot of that agency and responsibility. So basically you're saying, I'm trying to say that this is who I am, I can't really change it. I'm a very anxious person, I can't really do anything in front of a lot of people. Right, there's a very good way to understand the concept that I'm talking about right now. So this is like how that makes sense if you actually think about it. It takes away a lot of the responsibility and agency that you have as a person when you are classified and you are put inside a box bordered by a lot of concepts, identity, traits and classifications. Now, so getting straight to the juice, basically, who the fuck decided there are only 8 or 9 intelligence types? Not saying anything bad to Gardner, right? There's amazing lad for all the work that he's put into the field. But to say that someone is just spatially gifted but can't do logic in terms of intelligence capacity, cognitive ability, is, to me, it seems very, very counterintuitive. But the theory in and of itself sounds very, very modern. It sounds very, very good because it explains a lot very easily. By the way, it explains very easily why you're good or bad at certain things. There's also another theory called the general intelligence theory, which also might be called the G factor, which basically says you have a general ability to learn, adapt, and go throughout life, in a way that allows you to survive. That's evolutionarily speaking, but also to progress now in a more modern society where survival is not as big of a problem anymore. And you can't really tell me that, like, 10,000 years ago, you had musical intelligence, or you had logical intelligence in terms of mathematical equations or anything like it. It might have been some form of it, but it's a way it's a too simple way and vague and lazy way of explaining how human intelligence and human nature actually works. For you to tell me that yes, uh, there are 9 ways in which you can be intelligent, and some friend of mine comes to tell me, oh, I can't really do maths because I'm just really good. I'm just really good at spatial intelligence, and they're very amazing at that, right? They're amazing guide. They're amazing at spending time in nature and actually navigating all of the spaces they're in. They remember every road they've been on, all of the paths that they've taken, and they know exactly how to trace back their steps to get back to base camp. Now, if you can actually understand what intelligence in the general sense means, is that intelligence is a way to define how adaptable you are in terms of cognitive ability, how easy it is for you to pick up new skills and adapt to new situations. That cannot be defined in only 8 or 9 categories that Gartner defined a couple of decades ago. Now, but what that does is that if somebody tells you you're not good at logical quizzes, well, there's many famous examples where mathematicians or physicists weren't really good at maths or physics in high school just because of some standards of teaching those subjects or being tested for them, right? But in the end, they were proven probably really, really good at those fields, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have heard about them. The point is, quizzes don't really determine how good you're at a general aptitude, which is intelligence in this scenario. So yeah, people raised in natural environments are still intelligent. People in tribes, people in the Amazon or in the Sahara Desert who don't have access to much electricity, education, maths, a lot of formal education in and of itself, they express that intelligence differently. But I bet you that when given opportunity to express that intelligence and a cognitive ability in some other way, they actually do it and do it pretty freaking well. So yeah, brains are plastic. They're not primed for one single stimuli, as in the learning styles theory or in the multiple intelligences theory. They're not primed for music. There's nothing special in and of itself about music specifically for one person, right? That's why you see a lot of athletes be really good, doing really good at school. For example, when they're at university, you see that a lot in American college sports, where a lot of the top students at universities that maybe end up being the top NBA draft picks for that following season are also like really good academically, or at least average or above average, right? Because they are cognitively able to adapt to the game of basketball, football, or to maths, to understand some other aspects of the world of concepts and systems that we actually live in, that we've created as a society, where psychology, basketball, maths, history, nutrition, health doesn't really matter, right? People skills as well. So yes, these categories are aesthetic. They are not natural or structural in any way. So yeah, what does astrology, numerology, and the lab coat illusion that I've just talked about all have in common? Basically, at some point you have to say it. A lot of pop psychology is astrology with just better marketing, right? Astrology, you're Scorpio, so you're intense, right? Sounds good across the board, right? MBTI, you're an INTJ, so you're strategic. Sounds good as well. Everyone's a bit strategic in and of itself, right? In and of themselves. Numerology, you're a life path 7, so you're introspective. DISC, you're a high D, so you're dominant. These are just different languages, but honestly, these are, if you actually think about it, the same psychological move, right? It just says there are just external systems that define your internal identity. One uses some stars, one uses some PowerPoints, doesn't really matter. And functionally, again, they do the same things. They just give you a story and they move you into it. They say, yes, you're very good at strategic thinking. Doesn't matter that a lot of people are. Like some Pisces might be very good at, maybe very intense as well, but because everyone is intense in some situations, and when someone tells you yes, you're intense, you automatically think to those moments in time and episodes in your life where you were really intense. Again, why these systems really exist, and here's where we're getting to some of the worrying parts of this mental health and self-improvement industry. Most of us think that these frameworks are made with a benevolent intention behind them, right? And at the very beginning, that's what happened. We built these structures to understand ourselves better. That's partially true. Okay, so just to tell you, these frameworks survive because they help institutions. As we've talked about, it makes no sense to define people or categorize people in just 4 categories, right? You could say that you're a duck or not a duck, very clear, but at the same time, it doesn't really help you much because it's really, really vague. What these quizzes, categories, classifications of people does for you, what these things do for institutions, it's very, very easy to understand people. Not because you actually define who they are, but because you make them become those stereotypes of people. You make them be anchored to those labels that become their identity. And you don't actually have to understand them fully, you just have to tell them what they are and they'll become that. It's very easy. It's very, very easy. It's very, very worrying at the same time, right? So it actually categorizes people. It predicts behavior. And just helps those institutions and the people in power just actually control and predict human behavior. And of course, that sounds very, very sadistic, but at the same time, it does make a lot of sense when you actually think about it. As again, complexity is expensive, right? Schools like these categorization systems. HR likes them. Programs likes them. Therapists sometimes even like them because it makes their job a lot freaking easier, right? It's a lot freaking easier to just memorize some theories about psychology and to understand how the mind actually works, and that humans are very complex, and you don't actually have to just memorize some theories about what to do when a certain human has that behavior and automatically go back to something you studied in med school or during your psychology masters or doctorate, right? That's not the best way to teach psychology, or actually any medical science for that fact, right? So again, these framework systems, whatever you want to call them, are not true, not even close to that. But what they are is they're operationally convenient for the institutions that are in charge of society. I'm not saying that in a conspiracy theorist way. Not in a conspiracy theorist way. Just that's how it really, really works at the end of the day. So again, the feedback loop, we've just talked about it. Again, once you take a test, right, and get a label, what happens is that you're more likely to act in accordance with it, avoid disconfirming behavior of that label, and interpret experiences through it, right? Which then validates the label, strengthens the identity and the label itself, and deepens the pattern. So you just need one thing that makes you twitch and like budges you into that direction to just get you starting that loop of behavior. And suddenly you see, like, yeah, it's accurate. That label was absolutely amazing, predicting my behavior. In and of itself, you actually predicted the behavior yourself. You actually did it yourself. So it's just self-conditioning, and it happens even if you think you are immune. You all know about information that enters our subconscious and guides our daily life and our thoughts. This is the same thing that's happening. So the real problem with these things is that these systems are not trying to describe people. They are made to shrink people. They don't expand the possibility of how we can evolve, adapt as people. They close doors on different versions of ourselves that we can evolve into, right? So they turn the I can learn this into I can learn this into that's not my type of learning. They turn I'm uncomfortable here into that's just who I am, right? They don't even let you understand that, yes, I may be able to get past that uncomfort, that lack of comfort that I'm actually experiencing right now. They turn that this is very, very hard and difficult into I'm not built for this. And people accept it because it's easier to accept these things than to actually power through them or adapt. And if you're primed to just accept these things, you're obviously less likely to actually change yourself. So the hard truth is that most people don't want freedom. As we've seen throughout society's history, we don't want freedom, right? We just want definition. We want an easy way to figure out why things are happening, right? About the outside world, about our own internal world, it's the same thing. We want boundaries, we want explanation, we want relief from responsibility, and labels provide all of that. Introverted, anxious person, INTF, all of that, INFJ, all of that type of, all of those things. I'm a visual learner, I'm a really anxious person, I have ADHD. There are a lot of actual medical conditions which actually have a biological basis that is very hard to change. But we know about those things and we're not actually going to approach those subjects today. So, these labels provide clarity in some sense, but they also take away something very, very important, which is range. The range of possibilities of you, how you can change yourself, how you can adapt to be way, way more prepared for a lot more situations that you can actually encounter in your life. And again, range is power. Range lets you change, range lets you adapt, and unfortunately, that's the thing that the people in power are most afraid. People that can adapt and that can evolve and that can face more and more difficult situations, more and more varied situations. So the point of it, all this is that I'm not saying that these systems are evil, right? I'm just saying. So I'm not saying that these systems are evil.
Ratify.
Okay, so I'm not saying that these systems are evil. I'm just saying that they're bad when they are reified, when they are put into light, put into real life and made your own reality. If I take an online quiz right now and it says to me that I'm an introverted person, I'll probably stop. I might actually stop being so social. I might actually stop hanging out with some of my friends, or at least tune it down by quite a lot, not because it's bad or good in any way, but just because that's a label that I can very well fit within, and that gives me a lot of clarity about who I am. But that's not how people work. We adapt, we change, we are fluid, we are very complex. We are not a label or a couple of labels, we are systems that are constantly changing. So, again, the moment you let a quiz tell you who you are, you've already given up more than you think. And sooner than you realize it adds up, and then you become whatever that quiz tells you to be, right? Because the moment you let a quiz tell you who you are, you've already given up more than you think. And sooner than you realize it adds up, and you become whatever that quiz tells you to be. And I don't think I need to be telling you that this is a problem. Now, in the end, just to end this, you are not a type of person, you're not a category of person, you're not an archetype of person either. You're not any static, rigid system of traits, behaviors, personalities, or abilities. None of that. You're a person, and a person is meant to adapt, a person is meant to evolve. And again, the moment you stop evolving because the label is posed onto yourself, or because the label feels accurate, you're not actually continuing your development, you freeze yourself. And that may very well seem as clarity, even though it actually isn't. And no test on the internet has the right to do that to you. No test on the internet has the right to freeze you in your development and the way you adapt to the world. Absolutely nothing. Don't let that change you. Don't let this mental health industry and self-improvement industry of overly diagnosing yourself and other people into putting boundaries onto yourself. Because as long as it doesn't physically hurt you, there's so many ways you can just improve your life. As long as it doesn't physically, biologically hurt you, you can get better. You can get past it. Just don't let any weird bellend on the internet tell you that you're introverted or that you have ADHD just based on some internet test. You're more than that. And please just remember that from this video. We'll approach more of these topics in the future. This is the first video of what I would like to call my mind diaries, my mind journal. There will be, yeah. So this is the first video. Hope you like it. I'll actually upload a lot of the references I've mentioned in this video or in the description, and right now it's just exploring some of the things that I actually enjoy. So yeah, hopefully you liked it. See you next time.